The real war begins. Kael Draven's voice lingered in the freezing air long after the words left his mouth. Elara Nightshade stood motionless beside him on the ancient black balcony, staring across the endless mountain range drenched in crimson sunset. Snow spiraled through the wind below, vanishing into the dark cliffs surrounding the fortress. For one suspended moment, the world felt impossibly still. Then Elara turned toward him sharply. "War," she repeated. "What does that mean?" Kael did not answer immediately. His mismatched eyes remained fixed on the distant horizon, one molten gold, the other icy silver, both unreadable beneath the fading red light. That unsettled her more than any answer could have. The silence stretched. Cold wind swept through Elara's platinum hair, tugging violently at the dark cloak wrapped around her shoulders. The silver mark beneath her collarbone burned faintly beneath the fabric, pulsing in strange rhythm ever since they arrived at the fortress. Kael finally spoke. "It means the moment you crossed into Black Hollow territory." His gaze darkened slightly. "You stopped being hidden." Elara frowned. "I was never hidden." That earned her a slow glance. Not mocking, almost pitying. "Yes," Kael said quietly. "You were." Before Elara could demand another explanation, a massive bell exploded somewhere deep inside the fortress. The sound thundered through the mountains. Once, twice, 3 times. Elara jumped violently at the noise. The atmosphere changed instantly. Below them, the castle erupted into movement. Shouting echoed from the lower courtyards. Heavy gates groaned open somewhere beneath the mountain fortress. Wolves sprinted across torchlit walkways while guards armed themselves along the outer walls. Kael's expression hardened immediately. Another bell rang. Then another. "Fast now." "Urgent." "What is that?" Elara asked. Kael's eyes narrowed toward the northern side of the castle. An intrusion. Something cold slid down Elara's spine. "This place can be invaded." "That depends who's attempting it." The answer did not comfort her. Far below, armored wolves rushed across the snow-covered courtyard carrying silver weapons and black banners marked with the same symbol hidden beneath Elara's collarbone. A circle of thorns around a split moon. Her stomach tightened. She had noticed the symbol throughout the fortress since arriving. Carved into walls, painted onto banners, forged into iron doors. But no one had explained why it matched the mark on her body, or why every time she saw it, something inside her reacted. Another scream echoed through the fortress. Closer this time. Elara stiffened. The scream cut off abruptly. Silence followed. Then came snarling. Not ordinary wolves. Something harsher. More violent. Kael moved instantly. 1 second beside her. The next already striding toward the balcony entrance with terrifying speed. "Elara," he said sharply. "Stay behind me." Her pulse spiked. The command in his voice left absolutely no room for argument. Heavy footsteps thundered down the corridor outside moments before a guard burst onto the balcony. The man dropped to one knee immediately. Alpha King. Snow covered his black armor. Blood streaked one side of his jaw. Kael's expression darkened further. "Report." The guard swallowed hard. The northern chambers were breached. "How many?" 3 dead so far. Elara's breath caught. "Dead? Inside the fortress?" Kael's voice remained calm. Too calm. "Who entered my castle?" The guard hesitated. And somehow that looked worse than fear. "We don't know." Kael went still. The guard continued quickly. They bypassed the outer walls without detection. No scent trail. No breach points. It's like they, his voice faltered, appeared. The temperature on the balcony seemed to drop. Elara suddenly remembered the assassin stories whispered across Silver Moon territory when she was younger. Creatures that crossed borders unseen. Wolves that served no pack. Monsters born from forbidden blood rituals during the old territorial wars. She had always assumed they were exaggerated myths. Kael's gaze sharpened. Where are they now? The guard's face drained slightly. They're searching the fortress. Elara frowned. For what? The guard looked at her. Directly at her. Fear flashed across his expression so quickly she almost missed it. Then he said quietly, "They were asking for the girl." Silence crashed across the balcony. Elara felt her pulse hammer once against her ribs. Then harder. No. No, that made no sense. Nobody knew her. Nobody cared enough to hunt her. She was an omega from an insignificant pack. Forgotten. Rejected. Invisible. Wasn't she? Kael's aura shifted beside her. The pressure hit the air instantly. Dominant. Ancient. Dangerous enough that even the guard lowered his eyes further. When were they seen last? Kael asked. The East Tower. Kael cursed softly under his breath. Then the howl came. Deep. Violent. Close enough to shake the stone beneath Elara's feet. Every wolf in the courtyard below froze instantly. Elara's blood turned cold. That was not a normal howl. There was intelligence inside it. Hatred. Another howl answered from somewhere within the fortress walls. Then another. The guards below erupted into chaos. Seal the inner gates. Protect the lower chambers. Move. Kael grabbed Elara's wrist suddenly. Warm fingers. Iron grip. Inside. He pulled her into motion before she could protest. They moved quickly through massive black corridors lined with silver torches and towering Gothic arches. Guards rushed past carrying weapons while servants disappeared into hidden rooms in panic. Elara struggled to keep pace beside him. "What's happening?" she demanded. Kael did not slow down. "They found you too quickly." "That doesn't answer my question." His jaw tightened. "It means someone already knew where to look." Fear twisted inside her chest. The silver mark beneath her collarbone burned harder now. Pulse. 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 Almost like it was reacting to something nearby. Kael noticed instantly. His eyes flicked downward briefly. When did it start burning? On the balcony. How intense? "It hurts." That answer clearly disturbed him. Wonderful. They turned sharply into another corridor. Suddenly Kael stopped moving. So abruptly Elara nearly collided with him. The hallway ahead was silent. Too silent.
No guards.
No movement. Only blood smeared across the black stone floor. Elara's stomach dropped. A body lay several feet ahead. One of Kael's guards. Or what remained of him. His chest had been ripped open. Silver eyes stared lifelessly toward the ceiling. Elara inhaled sharply and stumbled backward. Kael moved in front of her instantly, blocking the view. "Do not look." Too late. She had already seen enough. A low growl echoed somewhere nearby. Kael's entire body went rigid. The sound came again. Closer. From the darkness ahead. Elara felt instinct crawl violently beneath her skin. Predator. A figure stepped slowly into the torchlight. At first, Elara thought it was a wolf. Then she realized wolves did not stand like that. The creature was enormous. Humanoid. Twisted. Its body looked partially transformed. Black fur covering massive shoulders and arms while elongated claws scraped against stone. Silver eyes glowed unnaturally from a face too human to be fully beast. and around its throat, the same thorned moon symbol, burned directly into flesh. The creature smiled, a horrifyingly human expression. There she is. Elara froze. The voice sounded wrong, like multiple voices speaking underneath one another. Kael stepped forward slowly. Every torch in the corridor flickered violently. "You entered my territory," he said calmly. "You killed my wolves." The creature tilted its head. And something terrifying entered Kael's expression then. Not rage. Something colder. More final. "You should have run while you still could." The creature lunged. Everything happened instantly. Kael moved faster than Elara's eyes could fully process. 1 second the creature was charging. The next Kael's hand was around its throat. The impact shattered stone walls beside them. Elara gasped. The creature snarled violently, claws slashing toward Kael's face. Kael caught the wrist effortlessly, then broke it. The sound echoed sickeningly through the corridor. The creature screamed. Kael slammed it into the wall hard enough to crater black stone. "You were sent," Kael said quietly. "By who?" The creature laughed through blood. "You already know." Kael's eyes darkened. "Answer carefully." The creature's silver gaze shifted suddenly toward Elara, and smiled again. "The blood heir awakens." Alara's pulse stopped. The mark beneath her collarbone exploded with pain. She cried out and grabbed her chest instinctively. Heat tore through her veins. Violent. Uncontrollable. Kael's attention snapped toward her immediately. "Elara." The creature laughed harder now. "Oh, she feels it." Pain crashed through Elara again. Her knees buckled. Kael released the creature instantly and caught her before she hit the floor. The moment his hand touched her, the mark flared beneath her skin. Silver light burst through the fabric near her collarbone. The corridor went silent. Even the creature stopped laughing. Kael stared downward. For the first time since meeting him, he looked shocked. The silver glow spread across Elara's skin like branching moonlight veins. Her wolf surged violently beneath her ribs. Not weak. Not submissive. Ancient. Power exploded outward from her body in a sudden invisible wave. Every torch in the corridor shattered simultaneously. Darkness swallowed everything. The creature screamed. Not in pain. Fear. "What have you done?" it whispered. Elara couldn't breathe. The power inside her felt alive. Hungry. Wrong. Kael tightened his grip around her protectively. "Elara," he said sharply, "look at me." She tried, but another pulse hit her body. Harder. Visions flashed violently across her mind. Burning kingdoms. Silver armies. A throne carved from black stone. Blood covering snow. And eyes. Gold and silver eyes watching her across centuries. Elara gasped and reality snapped back violently. The corridor returned. Torchlight flickered again. Kael was still holding her. The creature had backed away now. Terrified. "No," it whispered hoarsely. She awakened too soon. Kael rose slowly to his full height. And smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. "You should not have touched her." The creature turned to run. It never made it more than 2 steps. Kael crossed the corridor instantly. One movement. One brutal crack. The creature collapsed lifelessly onto the floor. Silence followed. Elara stared at the body trembling. Her pulse still raced violently beneath her skin. Kael turned back toward her slowly. The look in his eyes had changed. Not because of fear. Recognition. Like something he had been waiting for had finally arrived. "Elara," he said quietly. She swallowed hard. "What?" Was that? Kael approached her carefully now, like she had become something dangerous. Your power. Fear slid through her chest. I don't have power. You do now. Another distant howl echoed somewhere beyond the fortress walls. Then another. Many this time. Coming closer. Kael's gaze shifted toward the dark castle windows. They felt it. Elara's throat tightened. Who? For several seconds, he said nothing. And somehow that silence terrified her more than the attack. Then finally, the ones who destroyed your bloodline the first time. The first thing Elara noticed about Black Hollow territory was the silence. Not peace. Not calm. Silence in the way predators became quiet before something died. The mountain road stretched endlessly beneath heavy snowfall as Kael Draven's carriage climbed higher into the northern cliffs. Jagged black peaks surrounded them from every direction, cutting into the dark sky like enormous teeth. Hours had passed since the attack in the corridor. Hours since silver light exploded from Elara's body. Hours since Kael killed the creature hunting her without the slightest hesitation. And still, nobody had explained what she was becoming. Elara sat near the frost-covered carriage window, wrapped tightly inside a thick black cloak one of Kael's servants had given her after the incident. Her fingers remained pressed unconsciously against the silver mark beneath her collarbone. The skin there still burned faintly. Alive. Every now and then, heat pulsed beneath it like something breathing under her flesh. Across from her, Kael remained silent. Watching. Thinking. That had become his preferred method of terrifying her. The carriage wheels crushed through thick snow while distant wolves howled somewhere across the mountains. Elara finally broke the silence. You said they destroyed my bloodline. Kael's gaze shifted toward her slowly. I did. Then explain. His expression revealed nothing. You nearly collapsed after awakening. That's not an explanation. No, his voice stayed calm. It's a reason. Frustration twisted sharply inside her chest. Ever since the attack, everyone around her had started behaving differently. The guards no longer looked at her casually. Servants lowered their heads when she passed. Even the wolves stationed throughout the fortress seemed uneasy near her now, as though the glowing silver light had changed something fundamental. Maybe it had. Elara looked away toward the frozen mountains outside. Less than 2 days ago, she had been an invisible omega inside Silver Moon Pack. Now monsters were hunting her across territories. The shift felt unreal. Kael suddenly spoke again. The wolves who attacked the fortress belonged to an extinct order. Elara frowned slightly. Extinct. They were supposed to be. His tone implied disappointment in that fact. Their kind served the old kingdoms before the territorial collapse. What old kingdoms? Kael leaned back slightly. For centuries, wolf territories were united under one throne. Elara blinked. That's impossible. No, Kael said quietly. It was erased. Something about the way he said it made cold unease slide through her stomach. Not legend. Memory. He continued. Long before the modern packs existed, there were bloodline houses powerful enough to control entire regions. The carriage lantern flickered softly between them. Those bloodlines disappeared after the war. According to who? The survivors. Elara stared at him. You talk like you were there. Kael's mismatched eyes met hers fully. I was. Silence crashed heavily between them. Elara forgot how to breathe for one terrible second. No, that wasn't possible. Wolves lived longer than humans, yes. Everyone knew that. But not centuries. Not wars ancient enough to become mythology. Kael watched realization spread slowly across her face. You're lying. I rarely waste time doing that. Fear curled quietly inside her chest, because the terrifying part was, he sounded truthful. The carriage suddenly slowed. Outside, heavy iron chains groaned loudly somewhere ahead. Kael looked toward the window. We are here. Elara turned quickly. At first, she thought the mountain itself was moving. Then she realized she was staring at walls. Massive black walls carved directly into the cliffs, towering so high they disappeared into snowfall above. Enormous iron gates reinforced with silver markings blocked the entrance ahead while torchfire burned along the fortress perimeter. Black Hollow Castle. No, castle wasn't the right word. This place looked older than kingdoms. Ancient. Like something built to survive the end of the world itself. Elara's pulse quickened slightly. Hundreds of wolves stood stationed along the outer walls wearing dark armor marked with the Thorned Moon insignia. The moment Kael's carriage appeared, every wolf lowered their head. Simultaneously, the gates began opening slowly. The sound echoed across the mountains like thunder. Elara swallowed hard. No one at Silver Moon had ever reacted to Damon this way. Not even their alpha-inspired silence like this. Fear. Respect. Absolute obedience. That was what Kael ruled with. The carriage entered the fortress courtyard. Elara immediately noticed the scale. Everything inside Black Hollow territory felt enormous. Towering black towers stretched toward the storm clouds above while bridges connected different fortress sections high overhead. Wolves crossed stone pathways carrying weapons, supplies, and banners beneath roaring fire pits mounted along the walls. Nobody spoke loudly. Nobody laughed. Even movement itself seemed controlled here. Disciplined. The carriage finally stopped near the central staircase leading toward enormous cathedral-like doors. Kael exited first. The atmosphere outside shifted instantly the moment his boots touched stone. Every nearby wolf straightened. Elara hesitated before stepping out after him. Cold mountain winds slammed into her immediately. Snow swirled violently around the courtyard. And every eye turned toward her. The attention hit like physical pressure. Not mockery. Not judgment. Calculation. The wolves staring at her looked confused. Suspicious. Uneasy. As though they were trying to understand why their alpha king had returned with a fragile-looking omega wrapped in black velvet. Kael noticed instantly. His expression hardened. The pressure in the courtyard became suffocating. Several wolves immediately lowered their eyes. Elara stared at him. He hadn't even spoken. A woman descended the fortress staircase toward them moments later. Tall. Elegant. Dangerous. She wore fitted black combat leathers beneath a silver-lined cloak, dark hair braided tightly behind her head. A sword rested across her back while pale grey eyes studied Elara carefully. Not warmly. She survived, the woman said. Kael's gaze sharpened slightly. You sound disappointed. The woman ignored the remark entirely. Her attention remained fixed on Elara. This is the girl. Elara frowned immediately. The girl? Not even a name. Kael stepped beside her slightly. Protective. Possessive. Subtle but unmistakable. Yes. Something unreadable crossed the woman's face then. Concern, perhaps. Or irritation. She awakened too early, the woman said quietly. Elara's stomach tightened again. There it was. That word. Awakened. Nobody would explain it. Nobody would explain anything. I'm standing right here, Elara snapped. The woman finally looked at her directly. Sharp grey eyes. Assessing. You should be dead. Well, that was rude. Elara stared in disbelief. Kael sounded entirely unsurprised by the statement. She's alive. For now, the woman replied. Enough. Elara stepped forward. Can someone explain why everyone keeps talking about me like I'm a cursed object? Silence followed. Several nearby wolves looked visibly uncomfortable. The woman's expression remained cold. What's your name? Elara demanded. After a pause, the woman answered. Lyra Voss. Commander, apparently. Everything about her radiated authority. Lyra crossed her arms. You triggered a blood awakening inside the fortress. Her gaze narrowed slightly. Do you understand what kind of attention that brings? No, Elara said sharply, because nobody explains anything. Kael finally intervened. Later. Elara turned toward him instantly. No. The word surprised even her. Nearby wolves visibly stiffened. Apparently people did not tell Kael Draven no. Interesting. Kael studied her quietly. And to Elara's surprise, he did not look angry. If anything, he almost looked amused. Dangerous mistake. She was absolutely furious with him. You dragged me across territories, Elara continued. People are trying to kill me. Monsters somehow know who I am, and every person in this fortress keeps acting like I'm about to explode. The silver mark burned faintly again beneath her collarbone. She ignored it. I deserve answers. Snow moved violently through the courtyard around them. Kael held her gaze for several long seconds. Then finally, you'll have them. Her anger cooled slightly. Not because of reassurance, because his tone sounded serious. Final. Like the moment he decided to tell her the truth had finally arrived. Kael looked toward Lyra. Prepare the war chamber. The commander's expression darkened immediately. You're certain? Yes. That single word changed the atmosphere again. Nearby wolves exchanged uneasy glances. Whatever the war chamber was, people clearly did not enjoy being summoned there. Lyra looked at Elara one last time before turning away sharply. I'll alert the council. Council. Wonderful. Elara was beginning to collect mysteries faster than explanations. Kael motioned toward the fortress entrance. Come. She followed reluctantly beside him. The massive cathedral doors opened before they reached them. Heat rolled outward instantly. The interior nearly stole her breath. Black Hollow Castle was unlike anything she had imagined. Towering vaulted ceilings stretched overhead covered in silver carvings and ancient symbols glowing faintly beneath torchlight. Massive black pillars lined endless corridors while enormous wolf statues guarded intersections like silent sentinels. The fortress did not feel luxurious. It felt powerful. Built for war. Built to endure. Their footsteps echoed across polished black stone as servants and guards moved quickly out of Kael's path. Nobody spoke to him unless spoken to first. Nobody questioned him. Elara glanced sideways at him. You really are their king. Kael's expression remained unreadable. They call me that. That wasn't an answer. It's the only one that matters. Annoyingly cryptic. Again. They turned into another corridor lined with enormous windows overlooking the snowy mountains outside. Elara noticed something strange immediately. Paintings. Old ones. Dozens of them covered the walls. Ancient wolves. Battles. Kingdoms. And symbols. Every single painting contained the Thorned Moon insignia somewhere hidden within it. Elara slowed suddenly. One painting caught her attention completely. A woman stood painted beside a throne of black stone. Silver hair. Pale skin. A glowing symbol beneath her collarbone. Elara stopped breathing. The woman looked like her. Not identical, but close enough to turn her blood cold. Kael noticed where she was staring. His expression changed slightly. For the first time since meeting him. Uncertainty. Elara, he said carefully. She barely heard him. Her eyes remained locked on the painting. The woman beside the throne stood next to a tall dark-haired king with one gold eye and one silver eye. Kael, or someone who looked exactly like him. No, that was impossible. The painting looked ancient. Centuries old at least. Elara stepped closer slowly. At the bottom of the frame, faded silver words were carved into the black wood. The last Moon Queen. Her stomach dropped violently. What is this? Kael said nothing. She turned toward him sharply. What is this? The silence that followed terrified her more than any answer could have. Because suddenly, every terrible possibility felt real. Damon Blackwood had not slept since Elara left Silver Moon territory with Kael Draven. Not properly. Every time exhaustion dragged him close to unconsciousness, the same image returned. Elara standing beside the Alpha King. Not crying. Not begging. Not broken the way she was supposed to be after the rejection. That was the part clawing through his thoughts now. She had looked at Kael differently. Confused. Terrified. But not shattered. And somehow that bothered Damon more than her tears ever could. Rain slammed violently against the windows of the Silver Moon Council chamber, while arguments erupted around him for the third time that night. You publicly humiliated her. What was I supposed to do? Damon snapped. The room fell briefly silent. Several elders exchanged dark looks across the long wooden table. None of them seemed particularly interested in defending him anymore. Funny how quickly loyalty shifted under pressure. Silver Moon's Alpha leaned heavily against the head chair, exhaustion visible beneath his eyes. Kael Draven entered our territory, he said carefully, walked into our hall, insulted our future beater publicly, and left with one of our pack members. Damon's jaw tightened. She chose to go. The words tasted wrong immediately, because even he knew that was not entirely true. Elara had looked overwhelmed when Kael took her hand, but she had still gone. That detail refused to leave him alone. Selene crossed her arms beside him, elegant as always. Perfect posture, perfect expression. But Damon noticed the tension beneath it now. She hated this. Hated the whispers spreading through the pack. Hated the fact that people were beginning to look at Elara differently. Maybe we should focus on the actual threat, Selene said sharply, instead of obsessing over an Omega who left willingly. One of the older elders scoffed openly. She did not leave with a rogue. Another added quietly. She left with the Alpha King. Silence followed. Even now, speaking Kael's title aloud unsettled the room. Damon leaned back in his chair, jaw clenched hard enough to ache. Everything had spiraled beyond control too quickly. 24 hours ago, his biggest concern had been avoiding an unwanted mating bond with an Omega beneath his station. Now Black Hollow territory was involved. Ancient symbols had appeared, and wolves across the region were already spreading rumors faster than wildfire. Rejected mate. Hidden bloodline. The Alpha King's chosen. The phrases crawled beneath Damon's skin like poison. Selene touched his arm lightly. Damon. He pulled away before realizing he had done it. The movement lasted less than a second. Still, her expression changed instantly. Tiny. Almost invisible. But there. Hurt. Interesting. Because for the first time since claiming Selene publicly beside him, Damon felt uncertain. Not about Selene herself. About everything else. The chamber doors burst open suddenly. A guard stumbled inside, breathing heavily. Alpha. Every head turned. The guard looked pale. Terrified. What happened? The Alpha demanded. The guard swallowed hard. A body was found near the eastern border. No one reacted immediately. Bodies along territory lines were unfortunate but hardly uncommon between rival packs. Then the guard continued. The chest was marked. Damon's stomach tightened instantly. With what? The guard hesitated. Then quietly, a split moon surrounded by thorns. The room went dead silent. Damon felt cold spread slowly through his chest. Not because he recognized the symbol, because he remembered where he had seen it. On Elara, that night in the hall, beneath the neckline of her dress just before Kael took her away. A faint silver glow. At the time Damon assumed it was some strange effect caused by the mate rejection. Now, not so much. The Alpha rose slowly from his chair. Who found the body? Border Patrol. Any signs of the killer? The guard's face darkened. No. The room grew heavier. Silvermoon's Alpha looked toward Damon carefully. When exactly did the mark appear on Elara? Damon stiffened immediately. I don't know. That's not good enough. Irritation flared. You think I was studying her skin? Several elders exchanged looks again. One finally spoke. Perhaps you should have been. The insult landed exactly where intended. Damon stood abruptly. His chair scraped sharply against stone. She was an Omega from a minor bloodline, he snapped. Nobody in this room cared about her until Kael Draven appeared. The truth of that statement settled heavily across the chamber, because nobody could deny it, not even the elders. Elara had spent years existing quietly at the edges of Silvermoon Pack, ignored, overlooked, useful only when convenient. And Damon had never questioned it. Why would he? That was simply how things worked. Strong bloodlines mattered. Power mattered. Status mattered. Elara possessed none of those things. Or so everyone believed. The Alpha's expression hardened. That Omega now has the attention of the most dangerous wolf alive. Silence followed again. Damon hated how true that sounded. He remembered the look in Kael's mismatched eyes inside the main hall. Cold. Certain. Possessive. Not the attention of a man casually rescuing a stranger. The attention of someone reclaiming something valuable. A disturbing thought occurred suddenly. Damon looked toward the Alpha sharply. You think he already knew about her? Nobody answered. Which was answer enough. Rain battered the windows harder outside. Celine's voice cut through the silence. This is becoming irrational. The room turned toward her. She straightened slightly beneath the attention. Elara was weak, Celine continued carefully. She barely had control of her wolf. She possessed no rank, no political importance, no influence. Then why did Kael Draven cross territories for her? That question came from one of the elders. Simple. Brutal. Impossible to dismiss. Celine's mouth closed immediately. Damon looked away toward the storm outside. For the first time in years, uncertainty crept into him. Not fear. Something uglier. Regret. Small at first. Barely noticeable. But there. Because suddenly Damon found himself remembering things he had ignored before. The way Elara always avoided conflict. The way other wolves quietly mocked her when she thought nobody noticed. How she still remained kind afterward. How she never once used the mate bond to pressure him after it appeared. Even during the rejection. She had looked humiliated. Heartbroken. But dignified. And Damon had destroyed her publicly anyway. A slow sickness settled in his stomach. Not because he regretted rejecting the bond itself. Because of how he had done it. The memory hit sharply now. You offer me absolutely nothing. The words sounded uglier every time he replayed them. The council chamber suddenly felt suffocating. Damon moved toward the door. Where are you going? Selene asked immediately. I need air. You're leaving. Yes. The irritation beneath her voice sharpened. This meeting concerns the future of the pack. Damon turned toward her slowly. And sitting here pretending everything is normal helps how? Selene stared at him. Something tense passed briefly between them. Not an argument exactly. Something colder. Hairline fractures. Interesting. Damon left before she could respond. The corridor outside felt quieter, but not peaceful. Whispers followed him immediately as wolves stationed nearby lowered their voices. He heard enough anyway. Kael Draven. The hidden bloodline. The mark. The rejected mate. Damon's jaw clenched violently. The rejected mate. As though he were now defined entirely by one decision. He moved quickly through the fortress halls until cold rain finally hit his face outside. The courtyard was nearly empty beneath the storm. Good. He needed silence. Needed distance from the constant speculation poisoning the pack. Damon stopped beneath the covered training pavilion overlooking Silver Moon territory below. Rain blurred the distant forest into shadows. Somewhere beyond those mountains sat Black Hollow territory. And Elara. The thought unsettled him immediately. What was she doing now? Had Kael explained anything to her? Was she frightened? No. Of course she was frightened. She had spent her entire life inside Silver Moon. Now she was trapped inside the territory of a legendary alpha feared across kingdoms. Damon exhaled slowly. A familiar voice interrupted behind him. You look terrible. He turned. His younger sister, Lyanna, stood near the pavilion entrance wrapped in a dark cloak. Unlike most wolves in Silver Moon, Lyanna looked unimpressed by Damon's status. Annoyingly consistent behavior. I'm not in the mood. Clearly. She approached beside him carefully. Rain echoed around them. For several moments, neither spoke. Then, did you love Selene? Damon frowned immediately. What kind of question is that? A simple one. He looked away. That has nothing to do with this. Interesting. Lyanna leaned against the stone railing. That wasn't actually an answer. Irritation flickered again. You came out here to interrogate me. No, her voice softened slightly. I came because you look like someone realizing he made a mistake. Damon laughed once. Humorless. You think this is about feelings? I think, Lyanna said carefully, you spent years believing Elara was beneath you because everyone else treated her that way. The words landed harder than expected. She was weak. Was she? Lyanna asked quietly. Damon frowned. His sister continued. She survived years inside this pack while being ignored by nearly everyone around her. Rain poured heavily beyond the pavilion. She never turned cruel because of it, Lyanna added. Most wolves would have. Something uncomfortable twisted inside Damon's chest again. Because Lyanna was right. Elara had every reason to become bitter. Instead, she became invisible. A survival mechanism. And Damon had mistaken quietness for worthlessness. The realization hit unpleasantly hard. Lyanna stuttered him. You didn't notice her until someone powerful did. That sentence cut cleanly through him. Because it was true. Kael saw something instantly. Something Damon missed completely. Or worse. Something Damon refused to see. A distant howl echoed across the rain-covered mountains. Both wolves went still. Not silver moon wolves. Different. Older. Even the rain suddenly felt colder. Lionel's expression darkened. The territories are changing. Damon looked toward the horizon. Toward Black Hollow. Toward Elara. And for the first time since the mating ceremony, he felt fear. Not that Kael would hurt her. That Elara might never come back at all. And somehow, that possibility hurt more than he expected. The summons arrived before dawn.
No messenger.
No warning. Just fire. A black flame erupted suddenly in the center of Black Hollow's war chamber, twisting violently above the ancient stone table before forming into a single silver symbol. A split moon surrounded by thorns. Every wolf in the chamber went still immediately. Elara stared at the fire from beside Kael, unease tightening her chest. The mark beneath her collarbone burned in response. Again. Always again. She was beginning to hate that sensation. The black flame shifted once more. Then words appeared inside the fire. The council has been informed. Silence followed. Kael's expression hardened instantly. Across the chamber, Commander Lyra Voss muttered something sharp under her breath. Elara frowned. What council? Nobody answered immediately. Wonderful. Apparently that was becoming a tradition. The black fire suddenly extinguished itself. Darkness swallowed the room for half a second before torchlight reclaimed the chamber walls. Kael rose slowly from his seat. They moved faster than expected. Lyra crossed her arms tightly. Of course they did. A dormant bloodline awakened inside your fortress. Dormant bloodline. Elara's patience finally snapped. What does that even mean? Her voice cracked sharply across the chamber. Both Kael and Lyra looked toward her. Good. She was done being discussed like an object while everyone else exchanged vague warnings and ancient riddles. I want actual answers, Elara said. Not half sentences. Not cryptic threats. Answers. The war chamber fell silent. Massive black maps covered the walls around them, marked with silver territory lines and ancient symbols Elara still did not understand. Torches flickered along enormous stone pillars while snow battered the narrow fortress windows high above. Kael studied her quietly. Then finally, you were born into House Aurelian. The name meant absolutely nothing to her, which became obvious immediately. Kael continued. Before the kingdoms fractured, House Aurelian ruled beside the throne. Elara blinked. What throne? The throne. His tone implied there had only ever been one worth mentioning. Lyra exhaled slowly from across the table. For centuries, the wolf territories existed under united rule, she explained reluctantly. One kingdom. One sovereign bloodline. Elara frowned. That sounds like mythology. It became mythology because the surviving packs buried it. The room grew heavier after that sentence. Kael moved toward one of the enormous maps mounted against the chamber wall. Silver markings stretched across mountains, rivers, and territories far larger than modern packlands. The kingdoms collapsed after the blood wars. His mismatched eyes darkened slightly. Entire bloodlines were slaughtered. Elara's stomach tightened. And mine survived. Kael looked at her carefully. Barely. The word unsettled her immediately. Lyra stepped forward beside the map. House Aurelian possessed something the other bloodlines feared. What? Neither answered quickly enough. Elara's pulse quickened. Finally Kael said quietly, the ability to bind wolves together. Silence followed. Elara stared blankly. I don't understand. You will. That answer irritated her instantly. Kael ignored it. The kingdoms fractured because the ruling bloodlines turned against one another. Packs split apart. Territories declared independence. Wolves chose power over unity. His voice lowered slightly, and House Aurelian disappeared during the war. Elara looked between them. So everyone thinks I'm part of some dead royal family. Lyra's expression tightened. Not everyone. Cold unease crept down Elara's spine. What does that mean? Before Lyra could answer, the chamber doors exploded open. Every wolf in the room turned instantly. A guard entered quickly, breathing hard. Alpha King. Kael's expression sharpened immediately. What happened? The guard swallowed. The council envoys have arrived. Silence crashed across the war chamber. Even Lyra looked alarmed. Too alarmed. Elara's stomach dropped. The council sent people here. Kael's face went completely unreadable. Yes. Something about that answer felt dangerous. The guard continued carefully. They're demanding immediate audience. Kael laughed once. Cold. Without humor. Demanding. Lyra stepped closer toward him. If all 7 houses sent representatives. They wouldn't have sent representatives. Kael interrupted calmly. They sent executioners. Elara's blood turned cold. Nobody corrected him. No one even looked surprised. Kael turned toward her slowly. You should remain here.
No.
The refusal left her mouth instantly. His gaze narrowed slightly. Elara, I'm done hiding in rooms while everyone else decides what happens to me. The chamber went silent again. Kael studied her for several long seconds. Then, unexpectedly, a faint smile touched his mouth. Small, brief, gone almost instantly. But it had definitely been there. Fine, he said quietly. Lyra looked horrified. You cannot bring her before them immediately. She's the reason they came. That's exactly why she shouldn't be there. Elara crossed her arms. I'm standing right here. Neither reacted. Rude. Kael moved toward the chamber doors. Prepare the throne hall. The words visibly changed the atmosphere. Several guards straightened immediately. Even Lyra stiffened. Elara, Kael said without looking back, stay beside me and do not speak unless necessary. That sounded suspiciously like an order. Unfortunately, curiosity outweighed irritation. Elara followed anyway. The corridors outside the war chamber had transformed completely. Black hollow wolves lined the fortress halls in full armor now. Silver weapons strapped across their backs while servants rushed through corridors carrying banners and torches. The entire fortress felt tense. Prepared. Like war truly might be approaching. As they moved deeper into the castle, Elara noticed something else. Fear. Not directed at Kael. At whoever had arrived. The throne hall doors towered nearly 3 stories high, forged from black iron carved with ancient silver markings. Wolves stationed beside the entrance lowered their heads immediately as Kael approached. The doors opened slowly, and Elara nearly stopped walking. The throne hall was enormous. Cathedral-like ceilings vanished into darkness overhead while silver chandeliers illuminated black marble floors polished like mirrors. Massive wolf statues lined the hall between towering pillars draped in black banners. At the far end sat a throne carved entirely from dark stone. Not decorative. Intimidating. Built to dominate. Elara barely had time to absorb the room before she saw them. 7 figures stood waiting near the center of the hall. All dressed differently. All dangerous. The atmosphere changed the moment Elara entered beside Kael. Every single one turned toward her instantly. The attention hit like physical pressure. Assessment. Recognition. Calculation. A tall woman in crimson robes stepped forward first. beautiful in a severe way. Sharp cheekbones, black hair woven with silver chains, pale gold eyes. Her expression hardened the second she looked at Elara. "Well," she said softly, "that explains the awakening." Alara's pulse quickened. Kael moved slightly closer beside her. Protective again. Interesting how naturally he kept doing that. The woman noticed too. Amusement flickered briefly across her face. The Alpha King grows territorial. Kael's voice stayed calm. "Speak carefully, Serafini." "So, that was her name." Serafini smiled faintly. "Still charming as ever." Another figure stepped forward. Male this time. Older. Broad shoulders beneath dark ceremonial armor. Silver streaks cut through black hair while icy blue eyes fixed directly onto Elara with disturbing intensity. "This is the surviving heir." Heir. The word sounded unreal every time someone used it. Kael's expression remained unreadable. "Yes." The older wolf approached closer. Elara resisted the urge to step backward. Everything about him radiated authority. Not pack authority. Something older. Stronger. He studied her face carefully. Then his eyes lowered slightly toward her collarbone. Toward the hidden mark. The temperature in the hall seemed to drop. "It's genuine," he murmured. Another council member cursed quietly behind him. "Wonderful." Elara was becoming deeply concerned about everyone's reactions. A third figure spoke suddenly from near the throne. "You should have killed her before awakening occurred." Silence slammed through the hall. Elara froze. The speaker was younger than the others. Perhaps early 30s. Dark grey eyes. White ceremonial coat. Expression completely emotionless.
Kael sera shifted instantly.
The pressure rolling through the hall became suffocating. Several wolves lowered their heads immediately. "You will not speak about her that way again." The calmness in Kael's voice somehow made the threat worse. The council member merely raised an eyebrow. "She destabilizes the balance." "She exists," Kael corrected coldly. "That alone destabilizes the balance." Elara finally snapped. "Can someone explain why my existence apparently terrifies everyone?" Every council member looked toward her simultaneously. "Not ideal." Serafini answered first. "Because dead bloodlines are not supposed to return." Alara's stomach tightened again. The older council member spoke next. "How's Aurelian unified territories through blood binding?" Elara frowned. "I still don't know what that means." Kael's jaw tightened slightly. The older wolf continued carefully. Certain bloodlines possessed abilities beyond normal wolves. Elara stared blankly.
No.
Nobody smiled. Nobody corrected him. Fear began creeping slowly into her chest. The council member continued. "Your bloodline could strengthen territorial bonds, influence wolf instincts, and stabilize fractured packs." That sounded impossible. It also made House Aurelian extremely dangerous. Serafini crossed her arms. "Wolves follow power. Your ancestors made loyalty itself part of their bloodline." Alara's mouth went dry. No, that could not be real. She had spent years barely controlling her own wolf. How could she possibly belong to something powerful? The younger council member spoke again, "Which is precisely why the kingdoms burned." Kael's gaze sharpened dangerously. "Careful." But the council wolf ignored him. History repeats itself. An Aurelian rises. Wolves gather around them. Then territories drown in blood. Elara looked toward Kael immediately. "Is that true?" Silence answered first, which felt horrible. Finally Kael spoke quietly. "Partially." Not reassuring. At all. The council member took another step forward. The last moon queen nearly destroyed the kingdoms. Elara's pulse stopped. Moon queen. The painting. The woman who looked like her. No. Kael moved instantly between them. Enough. The command in his voice echoed across the throne hall with terrifying force. Every torch flickered violently. The younger council member's expression hardened. You hide too much from her. I protect what remains. That sentence changed something in the room. Several council members exchanged dark looks. Serafini sighed softly. There it is. Elara frowned. There what is? Nobody answered. Instead, the older council wolf looked directly at Kael. You've grown attached. The hall went completely silent. Elara felt heat rise unexpectedly beneath her skin. Kael's expression became unreadable again. That is irrelevant. No, Serafini said carefully. It's very relevant. The younger council member laughed once. Cold. Of course history repeats itself.
Kael saura exploser en lit.
Every wolf in the throne hall stiffened under the crushing pressure. Elara is under my protection, Kael said quietly. Any threat against her becomes a threat against Black Hollow. Silence followed. Heavy. Dangerous. Then the older council member finally spoke. And when the other territories decide they want the blood heir? No one answered. Because suddenly, everyone in the hall already knew the truth. War was no longer approaching. It had already begun. The throne hall emptied slowly after the council meeting. Not calmly. Carefully. Like every wolf inside understood they were walking away from the edge of something catastrophic. Council members disappeared into guarded corridors under heavy escort, while Black Hollow soldiers sealed different sections of the fortress one by one. Orders echoed through the castle non-stop now. Double the Eastern Watch. Secure the lower gates. No one enters the inner fortress without clearance. The atmosphere had changed completely. War was no longer rumor. It lived inside the walls now. Elara barely noticed any of it. She walked beside Kael through the massive fortress corridors in total silence, her thoughts spiraling too violently to settle. Blood heir. Moon queen. Ancient bloodline. Abilities. None of it felt real. It felt like someone had taken another person's life and shoved it into her hands. Kael stopped suddenly outside enormous iron doors marked with silver carvings. 2 guards stationed outside immediately straightened. Elara stays with me, Kael said. Neither guard questioned him. Of course they didn't. The doors opened slowly. Elara stepped inside and immediately realized this was not another throne room or council chamber. This place felt older. Far older. The circular room was enormous, built entirely from black stone veined with silver glowing faintly beneath the surface. Ancient symbols covered the walls while massive candles burned around a raised platform at the center. The air itself felt strange here. Heavy. Alive. Elara frowned slightly. What is this place? Kael closed the doors behind them. The origin chamber. That explained absolutely nothing. Elara crossed her arms immediately. You really enjoy saying mysterious things without context. A faint flicker of amusement crossed his face. Gone quickly. Still there. Most wolves cannot enter this chamber. Her stomach tightened. Why? Kael looked toward the glowing silver markings surrounding the raised platform. Because it reacts to bloodline energy. The second he finished speaking, the room reacted. Silver light pulsed beneath the stone floor. Elara froze. The glowing veins inside the walls brightened instantly. Her mark burned sharply beneath her collarbone. No. No, absolutely not. Elara, Kael said quietly, breathe. Easy for him to say. The silver light intensified around her feet. The chamber seemed to awaken slowly in response to her presence. Ancient symbols across the walls flickered alive one by one. Elara stared in horror. I'm doing that. Yes. Her pulse accelerated instantly.
No.
Kael approached carefully. You're frightened. You think. The mark pulsed again. Heat spread violently beneath her skin. Elara grabbed the edge of a nearby stone pillar as dizziness hit hard. The chamber lights exploded brighter. Kael's expression changed immediately. Elara. Something inside her snapped. Not painfully. Open. Like a locked door inside her mind had suddenly cracked apart. The room vanished. Snow. Endless snow. Elara gasped sharply as the vision swallowed her whole. She stood in the center of a massive battlefield beneath a silver sky. Wolves surrounded her from every direction wearing ancient armor marked with the thorned moon symbol. Thousands of them. An army. Blood covered the snow. Screams echoed across burning mountains. At the center of it all stood a woman with silver hair flowing violently through icy wind. The Moon Queen. The woman from the painting. And beside her, Kael. Younger somehow, but unmistakably him. One gold eye. One silver. Both stained with fury. The Moon Queen raised a glowing silver hand toward the battlefield. Then everything changed. Wolves stopped fighting. Entire armies froze. Like invisible force slammed through the mountains themselves. Elara felt it. Power. Ancient. Overwhelming. Not domination. Connection. Every wolf on the battlefield looked toward the Moon Queen simultaneously, bound together by something deeper than commands. Loyalty. Instinct. Soul. The sensation crashed violently through Elara's chest. Then came screaming. The vision twisted. Blood exploded across snow. The Moon Queen collapsed suddenly with a silver blade buried through her chest. Kael roared. The sound shook the world. Darkness swallowed everything. Elara. Reality slammed back hard. Elara stumbled violently backward, gasping for air. Kael caught her before she hit the stone floor. The chamber lights flickered uncontrollably around them. Her entire body trembled. What did you see? She stared at him breathlessly. You. Kael went still. Elara's pulse hammered violently. There was a battle, and a woman. The Moon Queen. Not a question. He already knew. Elara looked at him in disbelief. She looked like me. Silence followed. Not denial. Not surprise. Silence. And suddenly that terrified her more than the vision itself. Kael guided her carefully toward the raised platform at the chamber center. You inherited her memories. Elara jerked away instantly. No. Yes. No. Her voice cracked sharply. This is insane. The silver markings along the floor pulsed again beneath her feet. The chamber hummed softly around them. Kael's expression softened slightly. Not pity. Understanding. The awakening unlocked ancestral memory. Elara stared at him. You're talking like this is normal. It was. Was. Past tense again. Always past tense. Elara pressed trembling fingers against her forehead. This can't be happening. Kael watched her quietly for several seconds. Then, do you know why the kingdoms feared your bloodline? She laughed once. Shaky. Because apparently my ancestors enjoyed terrifying everyone. No. His gaze darkened. Because they could influence wolf instinct itself. Cold silence settled through the chamber. Elara blinked slowly. What? Kael moved closer toward the glowing symbols surrounding the platform. Most alpha dominance works through force. His voice echoed softly through the chamber. Submission, fear, hierarchy. He looked toward her, but House Aurelian functioned differently. The mark beneath Elara's collarbone burned hotter. Your bloodline strengthened unity naturally. Wolves followed Aurelians instinctively. No, no, absolutely not. That's impossible. Kael held her gaze steadily. You already felt it. Elara froze. Because she had. In the vision. That pull. That connection between wolves. Not control. Something deeper. More terrifying. Her stomach twisted sharply. That creature in the corridor. Kael nodded once. It feared you. Why? Because ancient wolves recognize bloodline instinct faster than modern ones. Elara's breathing became uneven. She looked down at her hands. Nothing looked different. Nothing felt normal anymore. Kael approached slowly. Your power's unstable right now. Oh good, Elara muttered weakly. That's comforting. A faint exhale escaped him. Almost a laugh. Almost. The awakening accelerated too quickly. Elara frowned. What caused it? Silence. Then. Me. Her head snapped upward. What? Kael's jaw tightened slightly. The blood bond reacted to proximity. Elara stared blankly. What blood bond? The chamber went very quiet. Kael looked away briefly. And suddenly, for the first time, he seemed uncertain. That unsettled her immediately. Elara, he said carefully, the mark on your collarbone is not simply a bloodline seal. Her pulse quickened. No. No. Absolutely not. It's a claim. The word hit hard. Cold. Possessive. Ancient. Elara stepped backward immediately. A claim. Kael's expression remained unreadable. Centuries ago, royal bloodlines formed sacred bonds differently than modern mates. Her stomach dropped. You're saying this is a mating bond? No. That answer should have relieved her. Instead, it somehow felt worse. It's older than that. Wonderful. Just wonderful. Kael continued carefully. A blood claim binds power, territory, and bloodline survival together. Elara stared at him. You marked me. Silence answered. That was enough. Anger exploded instantly. You had no right. The chamber reacted violently. Silver light burst through the floor. The wall shook. Every candle in the room erupted brighter simultaneously. Kael moved instantly. Elara. No. Power slammed outward from her body in an invisible wave. The entire chamber trembled. Stone cracked beneath her feet. Elara gasped sharply and stumbled backward in horror. I didn't mean. Kael caught both her wrists immediately. Look at me. The command in his voice cut through the panic instantly. Her pulse raced violently. The glowing silver beneath the floor intensified around them. Kael tightened his grip slightly. Control your breathing. I can't. Yes, you can. The chamber lights flickered wildly. Elara's emotions felt wrong suddenly. Too large. Fear crashed too hard. Anger burned too hot. Like her wolf had become amplified beyond control. Kael stepped closer. Focus on my voice. His scent surrounded her instantly. Winter smoke. Pine. Leather. Something dangerously grounding beneath it all. The chaotic energy inside her eased slightly. The room stopped shaking. Elara exhaled shakily. Kael remained very still in front of her. Too close. Way too close. The silver mark beneath her collarbone pulsed once. Then his eyes flashed briefly. Gold and silver glowing faintly in the dark chamber. Elara's wolf reacted instantly. Recognition. Longing. The intensity terrified her. She pulled away sharply. What is happening to me? Kael's gaze remained fixed on her. Your wolf recognizes mine. The answer hit harder than expected. Elara looked away immediately.
No.
Yes. I barely know you. Your blood remembers. That sentence sent chills down her spine. The chamber suddenly rumbled softly again. Different this time. Not from her. Kael's expression changed instantly. Sharp. Alert. The massive chamber doors burst open. Commander Lyra entered quickly with several armed wolves behind her. Kael. Something in her voice immediately tightened the atmosphere. Kael turned sharply. What happened? Lyra's grey eyes flicked briefly toward Elara, then back toward Kael. The Southern Territories responded. Silence. Kael's expression darkened instantly. How many? All of them. Elara's stomach tightened. Lyra stepped further into the chamber. They know the blood heir awakened. Fear crept slowly down Elara's spine. Kael's voice lowered dangerously. And? Lyra hesitated. That alone was terrifying. Then quietly. They're mobilizing armies. The fortress changed after that. Not gradually. Immediately. By nightfall, Black Hollow no longer felt like a castle preparing for possible conflict. It felt like the center of an approaching war. Guards doubled across every corridor. Archers lined the upper walls. Massive iron gates sealed the lower entrances while armored wolves moved through the fortress with sharpened urgency. And everywhere Elara walked, she was watched. Not cruelly. Not the way Silver Moon had watched her. This was different. Careful. Alert. Like every wolf inside Black Hollow now understood she was no longer merely Kael's guest. She was the reason armies were moving. Which was a deeply unpleasant realization to live with. Elara stood near the enormous bedroom window assigned to her, staring out across the snow-covered mountains beneath the darkening sky. The room itself was absurdly large. Black stone walls. Silver lanterns. A fireplace large enough to stand inside. Heavy velvet curtains framing towering windows overlooking the cliffs below. Nothing about it felt temporary. That detail bothered her more than she wanted to admit. A knock sounded at the door. Before she could answer, Commander Lyra entered carrying folded black fabric over one arm. Elara. Elara turned slowly. You know, she said dryly, most people wait for permission before entering bedrooms. Lyra looked unimpressed. Most people don't have kingdoms marching toward them. Fair. Unfortunately. Lyra crossed the room and placed the folded clothing on the bed. Kael requested these. Elara frowned slightly. Requested. Interesting choice of wording. She unfolded the garments carefully. Dark fitted leather. Heavy black cloaks lined with silver stitching. Clothing clearly designed for movement and protection. Not decoration. Her stomach tightened slightly. This looks like battle gear. Lyra's expression darkened. It is. Silence settled briefly between them. Then Elara looked up sharply. Kael thinks I'm going into a battlefield. He thinks someone will eventually try taking you by force. That answer landed hard. Elara looked back toward the mountains outside. Snowstorms rolled violently across distant cliffs beneath the moonlight. Everything about this place felt colder after sunset. More dangerous. Lyra stuttered her quietly. You should eat. Elara blinked. What? You haven't eaten since morning. Oh, right. Food. Apparently, her body still required ordinary human functions despite reality collapsing around her. I'm not hungry. That wasn't a suggestion. Elara stared at her flatly. You and Kael have the exact same terrifying energy sometimes. A faint flicker of amusement crossed Lyra's face. Gone quickly. Get used to it. Wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. Before Elara could respond, the fortress alarms exploded. A deafening horn roared through the castle. Once, twice, 3 times. Every instinct inside Elara went rigid instantly. Lyra moved immediately. Stay here. What happened? Another horn blast shook the fortress walls. Lyra's expression sharpened dangerously. Someone breached the outer territory. Then she disappeared. Elara stood frozen for half a second. Then, chaos erupted outside her room. Boots thundered through corridors. Commands echoed sharply through the fortress. Weapons unsheathed. The atmosphere shifted instantly from tension to active threat. Her pulse accelerated. No chance she was staying inside this room while everyone else clearly knew something she didn't. Elara grabbed the black cloak Lyra brought and rushed into the corridor. Bad idea. Probably. Still happening. The hall outside was filled with armed wolves moving rapidly toward the western towers. Nobody stopped her. Mostly because everyone seemed too busy preparing for disaster. Another horn blast echoed through the fortress. Elara followed the movement instinctively until freezing voices reached her from farther ahead. Western cliffs. They crossed the boundary line. How many? Too many. Fear curled sharply through her stomach. She turned a corner and collided directly into a solid wall of black leather and muscle. Strong hands caught her instantly before she fell. Elara. Kael. Of course. His grip tightened slightly on her arms as his eyes swept quickly over her face. Not angry. Checking. Assessing. Like confirming she was unharmed. The intensity of it unsettled her pulse immediately. What's happening? She asked. Kael's expression darkened. Southern scouts crossed into Black Hollow territory. That sounds bad. It is. Behind him, heavily armed wolves rushed down the corridor carrying silver-tipped weapons. Elara's stomach tightened. Kael looked toward the soldiers briefly before returning his full attention to her. You should not be wandering the fortress alone. I wasn't wandering. One dark eyebrow lifted slightly. You were absolutely wandering. Rude. Accurate. Still rude. Another distant explosion echoed outside somewhere beyond the fortress walls. The entire castle trembled faintly. Elara's pulse jumped. Kael's gaze sharpened instantly. Without warning, he stepped closer. Too close. Again. You stay beside me from now on. The words were calm. Absolute. Elara blinked. I beg your pardon. The scouts crossed farther than expected. His voice lowered slightly. That means someone inside the territories is feeding them information. Cold unease slid down her spine. A spy? Yes. Wonderful. War and betrayal. Excellent combination. Kael's jaw tightened slightly as another distant horn sounded outside. Until we identify the leak, you do not leave guarded areas alone. Elara crossed her arms immediately. You don't get to issue commands about my movements. Something dangerous flickered briefly through his mismatched eyes. Then, very softly, yes. Ido. The air between them shifted instantly. Heavy. Possessive. Elara's heartbeat betrayed her completely. "No," she said quickly. "You absolutely do not." Kael stepped closer anyway. "You are carrying an ancient bloodline every territory wants. That doesn't make me your prisoner." "No," he said quietly. "It makes you vulnerable." The word hit differently than expected. Not weak. Vulnerable. His gaze remained locked onto hers. "And I will not allow anyone to touch what belongs to me." Elara's breath caught instantly. Silence crashed between them. Somewhere outside, fortress alarms continued echoing through the mountains. Neither moved. Then her brain finally restarted. "I am not something you own." Kael's expression remained unreadable.
No.
That should have relieved her. Instead, he added, "You're far more dangerous than anything I could own." That answer somehow felt worse. Before she could respond, pain exploded beneath her collarbone. Elara gasped sharply. The silver mark burned violently beneath her skin. Kael caught her immediately as her knees nearly buckled. "Elara." The corridor lights flickered. Not normal flickering. Silver. The energy raced visibly beneath the fortress walls like glowing veins. Wolves nearby stopped instantly. Fear spread sharply through the corridor. Kael's arms tightened around her. "What's wrong?" Elara pressed a trembling hand against the burning mark. "I don't know." Then the visions hit. Not memories this time. Something else.
Fast.
Violent. A battlefield drowning in fire. Black Hollow collapsing beneath blood-red skies. Kael covered in blood. Wolves screaming. The throne hall burning. Then, a pair of silver eyes opening in darkness. Ancient. Monstrous. Watching her. Elara gasped violently as the vision shattered. The corridor returned hard enough to make her dizzy. Kael crouched slightly in front of her now, one hand gripping her waist firmly. "What did you see?" Her breathing became uneven. "Someone's coming." The wolves nearby exchanged uneasy looks. Kael's expression sharpened instantly. "Who?" Elara looked toward him in panic. "I don't know." The fortress trembled again. Harder this time. Then came screaming from outside. Real screaming. Every wolf in the corridor froze. A guard burst around the corner moments later, breathing hard. "Alpha King." Kael rose immediately. "What happened?" The guard looked terrified. "The western gate." A horrifying roar shook the fortress. Not wolf. Not human. Something else. Something ancient. Every torch in the corridor extinguished instantly. Darkness swallowed the castle. Elara's pulse exploded. Then, deep beneath the fortress, something answered her mark. A pulse. Ancient. Alive. Kael went completely still beside her. For the first time since meeting him, Elara saw genuine alarm cross his face. The entire fortress shook violently. Stone cracked somewhere below them. Then a voice echoed through the darkness. Not spoken aloud. Inside her head. Cold. Ancient. Awake. Find the air. Elara stopped breathing. Because she recognized the voice. It was the same one from the vision. And somehow, far below Black Hollow Castle, something imprisoned beneath the mountains had just awakened.